The conference hall floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure built by 17 different species working together. Inside, Ambassador Day One stood before the Galactic Council and did what humans always did. He talked. He negotiated. He found middle ground where others saw only conflict. The Velkari representative slammed his fist on the table. His species was large, covered in thick scales that could stop most weapons. They had conquered many worlds, and they wanted more. The small Thosian delegate trembled in her seat. Her people were traders, not fighters. The Velkari wanted to take 3 of their colony worlds. Daewon raised his hand calmly. "There is always another way," he said. His voice was steady and sure. "The Thosians can offer trade routes through their space. The Velkari gain economic access without bloodshed. Everyone wins." The Velkari representative, whose name was Holver, laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Humans and their endless talking. 3 centuries you have preached peace. 3 centuries of weakness." Daewon smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. "We prefer to think of it as strength. It takes more courage to build bridges than to burn them." Council voted. The compromise passed. The Thosians kept their worlds. The Velkari gained trade access. Another war prevented. Another day of peace secured. Daewon returned to his quarters exhausted. This was the 47th conflict he had mediated this year alone. His daughter, Ji-Wan, found him there, staring out at the stars. She worked as a cultural liaison officer, teaching alien species about human art, music, and philosophy. She was good at her job, just like her father was good at his. "You look tired," she said, sitting beside him. "I am always tired," Daewon admitted. "But the work matters. Every war we prevent saves millions of lives." "Do you ever wonder if they respect us?" Ji-Wan asked. "Or if they just think we are afraid to fight?" Daewon was quiet for a moment. "Respect is earned through actions, not violence. Our ancestors nearly destroyed Earth with their wars. We learn from those mistakes. If other species see that as weakness, that is their failure of understanding, not ours." Gi-Won wanted to believe him. She had been raised on stories of old Earth, of the terrible wars that nearly ended humanity before they ever reached the stars. The nuclear fires. The chemical weapons. The billions dead. Humanity had climbed out of that darkness and sworn never to return. For 300 years, they had kept that promise. Across the galaxy, on a beautiful world called New Busan, life continued peacefully. 12 million humans lived there, farming the rich soil and building cities that blended with nature. Gi-Won's brother, Hyen-woo, worked there as an engineer, designing water systems that would never harm the local ecosystem. He called her every week, sharing stories of his son's first steps, his daughter's school plays, the quiet joy of a peaceful life. "You should visit Hyen-woo," always said. "Bring father. Let him see what his work has built. A world without walls or weapons." Children who have never known war, Ji-Won promised she would. Soon, there was always time later, the Velkari fleets moved in the darkness. They had been planning this for months, moving ships into position while talking peace at the council. Holver had studied humans carefully. They would protest. They would negotiate. They would try everything except actually fighting back. This made them perfect targets. The first missiles hit New Busan's orbital platforms without warning. The defense satellites, designed only to track asteroids and debris, never saw the attack coming. They were destroyed in seconds. Below, on the planet's surface, warning sirens began to scream. Hyen-woo was at work when the bombardment began. He ran outside and looked up at the sky. Ships hung there, dark and massive, blocking out the sun. Fire began to rain down. He thought of his children at school. He started running. The bombardment lasted 6 hours. The Velkari were thorough. They targeted cities, farms, spaceports, everything. Plasma weapons burned through atmosphere and stone. Kinetic missiles struck with the force of nuclear weapons. When it was over, New Busan was silent. At the Galactic Council, Daewon received the news during another session. His hands shook as he read the message. 12 million people. Gone. His son. his grandchildren, everyone. He stood up slowly, his face pale. "The Valkyrie have attacked New Busan," he announced. His voice cracked. "They have killed everyone." The chamber fell silent. The other delegates looked uncomfortable. The Thausian delegate started to cry. The Quillen representative bowed his head. Hulver sat in his chair, arms crossed, saying nothing. "This is an act of genocide," Day One said. "I call for immediate military intervention. The council must act." The council charter was clear. It had been written 200 years ago, with humanity's strong support. Military action required unanimous approval. Any single member could veto. The Valkyrie, of course, voted no. And others, afraid of the Valkyrie or unwilling to fight, abstained. "I am sorry," the council leader said, "but we cannot authorize force. We can impose sanctions. We can condemn this action. You can do nothing," Daewon interrupted. "You will do nothing." He looked around the chamber at species humanity had helped, conflicts humanity had resolved, wars humanity had prevented. None of them met his eyes. G1 received her father's message while returning from a cultural exchange mission. "Go to New Busan," it said. "Find survivors. I will join you when I can." There were no survivors. G1 walked through ruins that had been cities. The ground was still warm, glass melted into strange shapes. She found what might have been her brother's home, now just a crater. She found a child's toy half melted. She fell to her knees and could not stand again for a long time. She thought about her father's words. Strength through peace. Courage through diplomacy. She thought about the Valkyrie laughing at the council while ash fell from the sky. She thought about her brother running toward his children as the fire came down, and something broke inside her, as it was breaking inside every human who heard what had happened. 300 years of peace. 300 years of choosing another way. 300 years of being better than their violent past. It had not saved New Busan. It had not saved anyone across human space. From Earth to the furthest colonies, people watched the footage. They saw the fires. They heard the silence. And they remembered something their ancestors had tried to forget. Humanity knew how to make war. They had chosen not to. But now that choice was over. The emergency council session happened 3 days after New Busan fell silent. Representatives from 40 species gathered, and for once, they seemed genuinely troubled. The Thausians brought flowers, a gesture of mourning. The Quillens offered scientific aid to help search for survivors. The Dravens, usually silent in council affairs, spoke words of sympathy. Ambassador Daewon did not attend. He sent a message instead, displayed on the massive screens for everyone to see. His face was different now. The kindness had not left his eyes, but something else lived there too. Something old and cold. "For 300 years we believed in this council," he said. "We believed that civilized species could resolve their differences through dialogue. We were wrong. Yesterday the Valkyrie destroyed an entire world while you watched and did nothing. Today humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We will not return." Before anyone could respond, a second message began. This one came from Director Taemin, head of Human Strategic Command. He was younger than Daewon, with sharp eyes and a military bearing that seemed out of place for a species known for peace. "My name is Taemin," he said. "Most of you have never heard of me because humanity has not needed military leadership for centuries. That ends now. You mistake our peace for our natural state. You forget we unified our world through fire and steel before we ever reached the stars. We chose diplomacy because we knew what war would cost. The Valkyrie have reminded us that some species only understand one language. Very well, we will speak it." The message ended. The council chamber erupted in debate. The Valkyrie representative Hulver stood and laughed. Empty threats from a race of talkers. "We have conquered 17 species. What can one civilization of pacifists possibly do? On Earth, and on every human world, the transformation began. It started quietly at first. Military recruitment centers that had been nearly empty for generations suddenly had lines stretching around buildings. Gi once stood in one of those lines, Still covered in ash from New Busan, she had been a cultural liaison officer. Now, she would become something else. The recruitment officer. A woman named Minji, who had herself just re-enlisted after 20 years of civilian life, looked at Ji-won's application. "You have no military training." "We'll learn," Ji-won said simply. "This is not like the old peacekeeping forces," Minji warned. "What we are building now is different. Harder. Are you sure?" Gi-won thought of her brother's children, who would never grow up. "I am sure." Across human space, factories that had produced farming equipment and medical supplies retooled their production lines. Ancient weapon designs stored in archives for 3 centuries were pulled out and examined. Some were outdated. Others were horrifyingly effective even by modern standards. Human engineers looked at these designs and began to improve them. Heian-woo had survived New Busan by chance. He had been in a deep underground facility when the bombardment began. Testing new water purification systems. He dug himself out 3 days later, alone. When the rescue ships finally arrived, they found him sitting in the ruins. Staring at nothing, they brought him to a military facility on Mars. He did not speak for 2 days. Then Director Taemin came to see him. "I know you are an engineer," Taemin said gently. "One of the best. We need people like you." "My family is dead," Heian-woo said. His voice was empty. "Yes. And we cannot bring them back. But we can make sure no other family suffers the same fate. We can make sure the Valkyrie pay for what they did." "I need you, Heian-woo. Humanity needs you." Heian-woo looked up slowly. "What do you need built?" "Warships. The kind that can strike fear into anyone who thinks about attacking us again." Within 6 months, the transformation was complete. Humanity had built a war machine that stunned the galaxy. The speed of it, the scale of it, terrified other species. The Quellans sent diplomatic messages asking humanity to reconsider. The Thosians offered trade deals if humanity would stop the buildup. The Dravens simply watched and said nothing. The Valkyrie prepared for war. They recalled their fleets from the territories they controlled. They conscripted more soldiers. Hulver gave speeches about crushing the human threat. But privately, some Valkyrie commanders felt uneasy. They remembered the human history texts, the records of old Earth's wars. One commander named Corvin spoke his concerns to Hulver. "They unified their entire species through total war," Corvin said. "They nearly destroyed themselves in the process. Are we certain we want to wake that part of them?" Hulver dismissed the concern. "Ancient history. They have been soft for 3 centuries. They will fold when they see our might." On Earth, in the rebuilt Strategic Command Center, Director Taemin stood before a massive holographic display showing the Valkyrie Empire. 40 star systems, hundreds of worlds, billions of beings. It was vast. But Taemin had studied history. He knew that size meant nothing if you could not defend it all at once. G-1 entered the command center in her new uniform. 6 months of intensive training had changed her. She moved like a soldier now, spoke like one. She barely recognized herself. Her sister-in-law Sujin worked here too, in cyber warfare. She had lost her husband and children at New Busan. Now she spent her days learning how to break Valkyrie communication systems. "Is it time?" G1 asked. "Soon," Taemin said. "We need a few more weeks. The last battle groups are still assembling." But soon, Admiral Kung Su oversaw the fleet. He was old, one of the last humans alive who had served in the peacekeeping forces before they were dissolved. He had spent 40 years in retirement, running a small restaurant on Luna. Now he commanded 300 warships, the largest human fleet ever assembled. "I never thought I would do this," he confided to his second-in-command, a young officer named Dong Han. "I became a peacekeeper because I believed in Day One's vision. I believed we could be better. Do you still believe it?" Dong Han asked. Kung Su was quiet for a long moment. "I believe we tried. I believe we gave peace every chance. But now, I believe in protecting our people. If that requires becoming what we swore we would never be again, then so be it." The Galactic Council tried one last time to intervene. The Quellan ambassador, a scholar named Thielen, managed to reach Director Taemin through back channels. They met on a neutral station in a simple room with no decorations. "This path leads to darkness," Thailand said. "We understand your pain. But genocide met with genocide serves nothing. We are not planning genocide," Taman replied coldly. "We are planning justice. The Valkyrie started this war. We will finish it, and after. When the Valkyrie are defeated, will you return to the council? Will you choose peace again?" Taman looked at the Quellan with eyes that had seen too much. "That depends on whether the rest of you learn from this. Humanity chose peace once. We were punished for it. If we choose it again, it will be from a position of strength, not weakness. Never again will we be victims." Thialin left the meeting troubled. The Quellans reported back to the council. The conclusion was clear. Humanity was going to war, and nothing would stop them. 6 months after New Busan burned, the human fleet was ready. 300 ships, crews trained in tactics not used for centuries. Weapons that made military analysts from other species go pale when they saw the specifications. And most terrifying of all, species that had finally remembered what it was capable of when pushed too far. Admiral Kyung-soo stood on the bridge of the flagship and gave the order. "All ships prepare for jump. Target coordinates are locked. We strike all 12 core Valkyrie systems simultaneously. No warnings. No mercy. Let us remind the galaxy what humanity truly is." The fleet vanished into faster-than-light space. The galaxy held its breath, and the Valkyrie, confident in their superiority, never saw it coming. The human fleet appeared in Valkyrie space like ghosts materializing from nothing. Not at the borders where defenses were strong. Not at military outposts where they expected attack. They appeared in 12 core systems simultaneously, surrounding the heart of the Valkyrie Empire. It was a feat of coordinated faster-than-light travel that military experts said was impossible. Humanity did it anyway. The Valkyrie homeworld, a massive planet called Valkyra, had orbital defenses designed to stop any invasion force. Hundreds of weapons platforms, thousands of defense drones, an entire fleet stationed in high orbit. Against a conventional attack, it was unbeatable. But humans did not fight conventionally anymore. Admiral Kyung-soo watched from the flagship as the first phase began. "Release the asteroids," he ordered. They had spent months moving rocks into position, using gravity assists and careful calculations. Now those asteroids, each one equipped with small engines and guidance systems, accelerated toward the orbital platforms. The Valkyrie tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. When asteroids weighing millions of tons hit metal, no shield could stop them. The orbital defenses shattered. Metal and fire rained down on Valkyra's atmosphere. The Valkyrie fleet tried to respond, but they had never fought an enemy that used the environment itself as a weapon. Commander Dong Hyeon led the second wave. His ships used hit-and-run tactics, never staying in one place long enough for Valkyrie targeting systems to lock on. They would appear, fire, and vanish back into faster-than-light space. It was exhausting and required perfect coordination, but it worked. The Valkyrie fleet, trained for honorable ship-to-ship combat, could not adapt. On the ground, G1 led one of the first landing teams. They dropped in stealth pods, avoiding the main defensive positions. Her team included 40 soldiers, all of them veterans of the accelerated training program. All of them had lost someone at New Busan. They knew what they were fighting for. The city they landed near was called Kraheva. It was a military production center, building weapons and ships for the Valkyrie war machine. G1's orders were simple. Destroy it. She thought about the orders for a moment, remembering her father's teachings about proportional response and mercy. Then she remembered her brother's face and gave the command. The facility burned. Valkyrie soldiers tried to defend it, but they had never fought an enemy that used stealth and speed over brute force. Human soldiers moved like shadows, striking from unexpected angles. They used the terrain, used psychology, used everything their ancient military texts taught them, in orbit. Sujin and her cyber warfare team worked from inside the fleet's command ship. They had studied Valkyrie computer systems for months, finding every weakness. Now they exploited those weaknesses ruthlessly. Velkar communications went dark. Their supply networks failed. Orders could not reach their ships. The Valkyrie military, so dependent on their technology, suddenly found themselves blind and confused. "I am routing false orders to their fleet," Sujin reported. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with cold fury. "Their ships think they are regrouping. They are actually moving away from their defensive positions." Good Director Taman said. He was coordinating the entire campaign from a command ship, jumping between systems. Press the advantage. No rest. No mercy. Across the Valkyrie Empire, the same pattern repeated. Human forces struck fast and hard, used unconventional tactics, and refused to fight the way the Valkyrie expected. In the Kursan system, human ships lured the Valkyrie fleet into an asteroid field and then detonated pre-placed explosives. In the Hulver system, named after the commander who destroyed New Buzan, ground forces armed local resistance groups and created chaos the Valkyrie could not contain. It was not clean. It was not honorable. It was war the way humanity's ancestors had perfected it. Total war. War where the only goal was victory and everything else was secondary. The Galactic Council watched in horror. The Quillans sent urgent messages demanding humanity stop. The Thasians closed their borders, afraid of being caught in the conflict. The Dravens said nothing but quietly began building up their own defenses. "They fight like demons," one council observer reported. "They do not stop. They do not negotiate. They have become everything they swore they would never be." Within 3 months, the Valkyrie Empire was in chaos. Their communication networks were destroyed. Their supply lines were cut. Their occupied territories were in rebellion, armed and trained by human special forces. The mighty empire that had conquered 17 species was crumbling. Commander Hulver, the architect of New Bizon's destruction, found himself trapped on Velkara as human forces closed in. He tried to retreat to a fortified position with his remaining troops, but Sujin tracked his movements through the damaged network. She sent the coordinates to G1's team. They found him in a command bunker, surrounded by his elite guard. The battle was fierce, but short. Valkyrie soldiers were strong and well-armored, but they fought with outdated tactics. Human soldiers used breaching charges, smoke, flashbangs, everything to disorient and divide them. When it was over, Hulver stood alone, his guards dead around him. G-1 faced him in the ruined bunker. He was bleeding, but still defiant. "You prove my point," he said. "Humans are savages. Animals. You made us remember what we are," Giwan replied. Her voice was cold. "You wanted to see humanity at war. Here we are." She executed him personally, a single shot. Then she ordered the execution broadcast across every Valkyrie communication channel that still worked. The message was simple. This is what happens to those who attack humanity. We do not forgive. We do not forget. We do not stop. The psychological effect was devastating. Valkyrie morale collapsed. Commanders began surrendering rather than face human forces. Some tried to flee to neighboring systems, but human ships were waiting. There was no escape. Admiral Kyung Soo coordinated the final assault on Valkara itself. The planet's defenses were shattered. Its military was broken. Its government was in hiding. He could have simply blockaded the planet and starved him out. But Director Taman had other orders. "We need to send a message to the entire galaxy," Taman said. "Make the occupation swift and total. Show them what happens when you attack humanity." The landing was massive. 100,000 human soldiers dropped onto Velkara's surface. They met little resistance. The Valkyrie, so confident in their superiority, had never imagined their homeworld falling. They surrendered in masses. But surrender was not the end. Human forces systematically dismantled every military installation, every weapons factory, every shipyard. Engineer Hyan Wu led teams that melted down Valkyrie warships and used the metal to build hospitals and schools. It was meant to be humiliating, and it was. "We are breaking them," Hyan-Woo told his sister during a brief reunion on Velkara's surface. "Breaking them so completely, they will never threaten anyone again." Is that enough? G1 asked. She looked at the Valkyrie civilians watching from their homes as human forces patrolled the streets. Some of those civilians had probably cheered when New Busan burned. But some were just people trying to survive. Father would not recognize what we have become. Father is dead, Hyen Wu said harshly. His way failed. This is the only way that works. The war lasted 1 year. 1 year to destroy an empire that had taken centuries to build. The Valkyrie, once proud conquerors, were reduced to a single world under human occupation. Their colonies were freed and given independence. Their military was disbanded. Their ships were scrap. Their power was gone. And the galaxy learned a lesson that would not be forgotten. Humanity had chosen peace once. But when forced to war, they waged it with a completeness that terrified everyone. The question now was whether they would ever choose peace again. The reconstruction of Valkyrie's pace took longer than the war itself. Human forces remained on Valkara and dozens of other worlds, ensuring the empire could never rise again. It was not a kind occupation. Every weapon was confiscated. Every military officer was tracked. Every communication was monitored. The Valkyrie, who had ruled through strength, now lived under the boot of a stronger power. Seojin worked with the humanitarian corps, trying to help Valkyrie civilians displaced by the war. She had lost her entire family at New Busan, and part of her wanted to see every Valkyrie suffer. But another part, the part her father-in-law Day One would have recognized, still believed in helping those who could not help themselves. They are not all guilty, she told G1 during a supply distribution in a refugee camp. Valkyrie families lined up for food and medicine, their eyes downcast. Most of these people never wanted war. They just lived under a government that did. They cheered when New Busan burned, G1 replied coldly. I saw the broadcasts. Valkyrie celebrating in the streets. Some did. Not all. Children were born here who never chose any of this. Do they deserve to starve because of what their leaders did? G1 had no answer. She walked away, troubled by questions she did not want to face. It had been easier when the enemy was clear, when every Valkyr was a target. Now looking at children who reminded her of her brother's kids. The lines were not so clear anymore. The Galactic Council attempted to engage with humanity again. Quellan Ambassador Thylin made the journey to Earth, requesting a meeting with Director Taemin. The meeting took place in what had once been the old human diplomatic building. Daewon's office remained empty, a memorial to a way of life that seemed lost forever. We are concerned, Thylin began carefully. The war is over, but your forces remain. Your military continues to expand. Your weapons development has not slowed. What are your intentions? Tommen looked at the Quellan with tired eyes. A year of war had aged him. Our intentions are to never be vulnerable again. Where was this concern when New Busan burned? When we begged for help and received sympathy, but no action? Your inaction taught us that in this galaxy, strength is the only protection, but at what cost? Thylin asked. You have become what you fought against. A military power ruling through fear. Better to be feared than pitied, Taemin said. Better to have others afraid of attacking us than to trust in councils and treaties that fail when tested. You taught us that lesson well. The meeting ended without resolution. Thylin returned to the council and reported what many had feared. Humanity had no intention of returning to their old ways. They had built a war machine, and they planned to keep it. Other species took notice. The Dravens, who had been expanding their territory aggressively, suddenly slowed their expansion. The Korthi Dominion, a militaristic empire, even larger than the Valkyrie had been, began reinforcing their borders near human space. And smaller species, seeing which way the wind was blowing, started approaching humanity with offers of alliance. Admiral Kung Su found himself hosting delegations from a dozen different species. They came with gifts, with trade offers, with requests for protection. The Thasians, who had once been defended by human diplomacy, now sought defense through human military might. They fear us, Kung Su said to Dong Hin as they reviewed the latest alliance proposals. Is that what we wanted? It keeps them from attacking us, Dong Hin replied. Isn't that the point? Kung-Su remembered the old days, when his peacekeeping forces were welcomed everywhere. They had been symbols of hope, not fear. Now when human ships appeared in a system, everyone went on alert. I am not sure anymore what the point is. We won the war. But what have we won, really? On Velkera, the occupation continued. Human military governor Minho ran the planet with efficiency, but little warmth. Valkyrie were allowed to rebuild their cities, but forbidden from any military development. Schools taught a new curriculum that emphasized peace and cooperation. It felt like programming to some Velkari, like humanity was trying to remake them in their own image. A Velkari academic named Torvin met secretly with Esiojin. He had been a professor of human studies before the war, one of the few Velkari who had actually tried to understand humanity's culture and history. You are repeating your own past, he told her. After your Second World War, the victors occupied and rebuilt the defeated nations. It worked because they offered hope, not just control. Where is the hope you are offering us? Esiojin struggled to answer. We are ensuring you cannot attack us again. By making us afraid? By treating us as conquered people? That breeds resentment. One day when you are weak or distracted, that resentment will explode. Your own history should teach you this. His words haunted Esiojin. She began writing reports to Director Taman, suggesting a softer approach. Some were read. Most were ignored. The military government had momentum. And changing course seemed impossible. Hyenwu worked on building massive defense stations along human borders. They were incredible feats of engineering, armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Each one cost as much as a colony world, but the funding kept flowing. Humanity was spending its wealth on protection, on deterrence, on making sure no one would ever dare attack them again. But the cost was more than money. Hyenwu noticed it in his workers. They were efficient, skilled, dedicated, but they were not happy. They built weapons instead of homes, fortresses instead of schools. The best minds of a generation were focused on destruction, not creation. What are we building toward? He asked G1 when she visited his station. More weapons? Bigger fleets? When is enough enough? When we are safe, G1 said. But she did not sound certain anymore. She had been promoted to general, one of the youngest in human history. She commanded forces across 3 sectors. Soldiers respected her, feared her, obeyed her without question. But late at night, alone in her quarters, she looked at pictures of her father and wondered what he would think of what she had become. Daewon had died. 6 months after New Busan, his heart giving out from stress and grief, his last words to G1 had been, simple. Do not let hate consume you. That is how we lose ourselves. She had not understood then. She was beginning to understand now. The galaxy settled into a new normal. Humanity was a superpower, respected and feared in equal measure. Their fleet was the largest. Their weapons were the most advanced. Their territory was secure, but they were also isolated. Other species dealt with them carefully, always aware of what humanity could do if provoked. Young species entering the galactic stage heard stories of the HFY War. They learned about New Busan and the terrible vengeance that followed. Some saw it as justice. Others saw it as a warning. Everyone agreed on one thing: never provoke humanity. But in the human territories, questions were beginning to surface. Veterans like Kyung-Soo wondered if they had traded their soul for security. Engineers like Hyenwu questioned whether endless military buildup was sustainable. Humanitarian workers like Esiojin saw the cost in civilian trust and cooperation, and in the highest levels of government. Director Timon sat alone in his office, looking at casualty reports from the war. Occupation expenses that drained resources from education and healthcare, and alliance proposals from species who wanted protection but not friendship. He thought about Daewon, about the man who had believed in a better way. He thought about whether that way had truly failed, or if they had simply given up on it too quickly. The war was won. The enemy was defeated. Humanity was safe. But as Taman looked out at the stars, he wondered if they had lost something more important than any battle could win. The question was whether it was too late to get it back. 2 years after New Busan, humanity stood at another crossroads. Intelligence reports came to Director Taemin's desk showing a new threat. The Draven Concordat, a mid-sized empire of aggressive traders and occasional raiders, was building up military forces near human space. Their fleet movements suggested preparation for conflict. General G1 reviewed the intelligence with her senior staff. The data was clear. Draven shipyards were working overtime. Their military budget had doubled. They were stockpiling resources on border worlds. It looked exactly like what the Valkyrie had done before attacking New Busan. "We should strike first," Commander Donghan argued. "Hit them before they are ready. Show the galaxy what happens when you even think about threatening humanity." Admiral Kung Su was less certain. "The Dravens have not attacked us. They have not even made threats. Are we going to start wars based on suspicion now? Better to prevent a war than fight one after they kill another million humans," Donghan shot back. "We learned that lesson at New Busan." The debate raged for hours. Military officers argued for preemptive action. Some suggested a limited strike, just enough to cripple their military capability. Others wanted a full campaign, like the one against the Valkyrie. Show the galaxy that building up forces near human space was unacceptable. But one person disagreed entirely. Hei-Wan, daughter of the late Ambassador Day-1, worked now in the Diplomatic Analysis Division. She had spent 2 years studying the Dravens, learning their language, understanding their culture. And she saw something the military analysts had missed. "They are not preparing to attack us," she insisted in a briefing to Director Taemin. "They are defending against the Korthi Dominion. Look at the positioning of their forces. They are facing away from our borders, not toward them." "The intelligence clearly shows military buildup," Taemin said wearily. He trusted Hei-Wan, respected her father's legacy, but he could not ignore what looked like an obvious threat. "Yes. But look at what else the intelligence shows." Hei-Wan pulled up data on the holographic display. Korthi fleets moving through Draven trade routes. Korthi mining operations starting on disputed border worlds. "The Dravens are not preparing to attack us. They are preparing to defend themselves from someone else, and we are about to destroy them for it." Co Jin supported Hei-Wan's analysis. She had been working with Draven refugees who had fled Korthi aggression. Their stories matched what Hei-Wan was saying. The Korthi were expanding, and the Dravens were in their path. "If we attack the Dravens now, we hand those systems to the Korthi," Seo Jin explained. "And the Korthi are 10 times more dangerous than the Valkyrie ever were. We would be creating a monster on our border." But the military leadership was divided. Many officers believed that any military buildup near human space was unacceptable, regardless of the reason. They had learned from New Busan that you could not trust other species to act peacefully. You could only trust in superior firepower and the willingness to use it. The decision came before the Human Council, the governing body that had replaced the old diplomatic system. It was a tense session. Hei-Wan presented her evidence. Gi-Wan presented the military assessment. Both made compelling arguments. "Every day we wait is another day they could decide to attack," Gi-Wan said. "We cannot afford another New Busan. If there is even a chance they are planning aggression, we must act." "But there is no evidence of aggression," Hei-Wan countered. "Only fear. Are we going to attack everyone who makes us nervous? That is not security. That is tyranny." The words hung in the air. Tyranny. It was a word that hit hard, because everyone in the room knew how far humanity had come from its peaceful ideals. They had become exactly what they had sworn never to be. A military power that ruled through fear and overwhelming force. Grin felt something crack inside her at that word. She thought about her father, about his endless belief in finding another way. She thought about Holver and the execution she had broadcast across Valkyrie space. She thought about Valkyrie children in refugee camps, afraid of human soldiers. She thought about Hyen Wu's question. When is enough enough? "I need to speak with my brother," Juan said suddenly. "Delay the vote for 24 hours. She found Hyen Wu on one of his defense stations, overseeing the installation of yet another weapons system. They sat in the observation deck, looking out at the stars, and talked for hours. They talked about their father Day One and his dream of a peaceful galaxy. They talked about their brother and his children who died at New Busan. They talked about what they had become and whether it was worth it. I used to design water systems, Hyen-woo said quietly. I helped people grow crops and build communities. Now, I build weapons. I am good at it. But I miss who I used to be, Will Doo-ji-won admitted. But how do we go back? After everything we have done, everything we have become, how do we choose peace again? Maybe we do not go back, Hyen-woo suggested. Maybe we go forward? We have the weapons now. We have the strength. But we choose to use that strength to protect, not to dominate. To defend, not to attack. Father would not recognize what we have become, but maybe he would recognize what we could still choose to be. The next day, Ji-won returned to the Human Council with a new proposal. Not a preemptive strike. Not a passive wait for potential attack. Something different. She called it defensive supremacy. We maintain our military strength, she explained. We keep our fleets, our weapons, our ability to wage war. But we return to diplomatic engagement. We use our strength as a shield, not a sword. We protect the weak, but we do not dominate them. We remember New Busan by ensuring no other world suffers the same fate, not by making the galaxy fear us. Director Taemin listened carefully. He saw the wisdom in it, but also the risk. And if we are wrong, if we extend trust and it is betrayed again, then we have the capability to respond, Gi-won said. But we are not wrong about the Dravens. Hae-won's analysis is correct, and if we attack them for preparing their own defense, we become the monsters. We become what the Valkyrie were. Is that what we want? The vote was close, but defensive supremacy passed. Humanity would not attack the Dravens. Instead, they would send diplomatic envoys, led by Hae-won, to open dialogue. They would offer to mediate with the Korthi. They would try peace again, but this time from a position of strength. Not everyone agreed with the decision. Commander Dong-han resigned in protest, along with several other hardline officers. They saw it as weakness returning, as betraying the lessons of New Busan, but others, like Admiral Kyun-soo, felt something like hope for the first time in years. The Galactic Council received the news with cautious optimism. Ambassador Thailand reached out to Hae-won personally. Your father would be proud, the Quellan said. You are choosing the harder path. The braver path. We are choosing a different path, Hae-won corrected. We are not the same humanity that my father led. We cannot be. We have seen what happens when peace is built on weakness. But we have also seen what happens when security is built on fear alone. Maybe there is a middle way, on Valkara. The occupation began to shift. Human forces remained, but Seojin's humanitarian approach gained more support. Schools taught cooperation, but also self-defense. The Valkyrie were not treated as conquered people, but as a species that had made terrible mistakes and was being given a chance to learn from them. Hyen-woo returned to civilian engineering. He still consulted on defense projects, but he also designed water systems again, helped plan new colonies, worked on projects that built instead of destroyed. It did not erase what he had done during the war, but it gave him hope that he could be more than just a builder of weapons. Gon stood in the rebuilt memorial gardens of New Busan. The colony had been resettled, life returning to a world that had known death. 12 million names were carved into the memorial wall. She found her brother's name, her niece and nephew's names, and placed flowers there. I do not know if we made the right choice, Father, she said quietly to the memory of Daewon. We could not stay the way we were. That led to this. She gestured at the names. But I think I understand now what you were trying to teach us. Peace is not about being weak. It is about being strong enough to choose restraint. We forgot that. Maybe we can remember again. The galaxy watched humanity with new eyes. They had seen the terrible fury humanity was capable of when pushed. But now they were seeing something potentially more dangerous, a species that could wage total war but chose not to. A species that had the power to dominate but chose to protect instead. A species that had learned both lessons, how to fight and when not to. Some species remained afraid. The Korthi, seeing humanity's new diplomatic approach, tested human resolve by attacking a Draven colony. Human forces responded with overwhelming force, driving the Korthi back, but stopping at the border. They could have pursued, could have invaded Korthi space, but they chose not to. The message was clear. Humanity would defend, but not conquer. Years would pass before the galaxy truly understood what humanity had become. Not the naive peacekeepers they had been before. Not the vengeful warriors they had been during the Valkyrie War. Something new. Something dangerous to threaten, but safe to live beside. A species that had touched darkness and chosen to step back from it. In the end, humanity did not abandon peace. They redefined it. Peace through strength. Peace through the capacity for violence coupled with the wisdom to restrain it. They remembered New Busan not through endless war, but by ensuring that what happened there would never happen again to anyone. The galaxy had learned fear. Now, perhaps they could learn respect.